All right, so a new episode of Once Upon a Boot here. I have my new guest with me, Jennifer Hobbs. She's a teacher. She's an Army veteran. She's getting into writing some books and all that stuff. What's going on, Jennifer?
Well, thanks for having me. And you're exactly right. That's where I'm
Yeah,
at right now. And I mean, I really want to keep writing books. However, at the same time, I really want to be a service to others. And so, I just kind of want to connect with people and have conversations, especially those ones that might be a little difficult. And hopefully, even if it helps just one person, then success.
yeah. And I think it's kind of funny. So you're definitely the first teacher that I've had on the show. And when I saw, especially that you were a third grade teacher, so
Yes.
like I know me with my kids, my patience is like next to none. And I think a lot of vets have like such a short, like I
hmm
guess kind of fuse with patience. So third grade, I mean, that's got to be pretty like trying sometimes. What made you want to do that?
Oh, man, honestly, so years ago, I that was just kind of one of the first things that came to my mind, like, oh, I like kids, I want to be a teacher. And then I think you just kind of, and for myself, fell into not really exploring my options. Just went to school. I was on a mission to do well because I knew at our financial situation, our state of growing up, my mom wasn't going to be able to provide any funding for myself. And so, in order to change how things were when I was younger, I knew I had to bust my ass to um, earn it. And so, and then from there, again, just I thought about psychology for a little bit when I was in college. Um, I, so I just kind of stuck with the plan. I
Yeah.
stuck with the plan. I never really, and the first job I got, I actually went to school to be a special ed teacher. I always had really
Huh.
wanted to do uh, deaf and hard of hearing, but it actually doesn't even work like that nowadays. Like you just go to school for special education and you don't really get to narrow in on
Oh, they just kind of put you
topic.
where they need you, sort
Right.
of thing.
And even classrooms, most classrooms aren't really built with just deaf and hard of hearing. Those are classes are few and far between. So I did start in special education, working with kids with behavior and emotional disorders. So
Hmm.
yes, really, really different experience, especially I was three, well, let's see, 4 years out of 3 or 4 years out of Iraq, fresh out of the deployment. And it was one of those things where I was just trying to get my first teaching job working at
Yeah.
a child care center, and that one came open. And I remember her asking me, why do you think that you would be good at this job? And I told her my patience, which, because I really have always been a patient person. On the inside, I'm crawling and I'm like, oh my God. But on the outside, I do a good job of just kind of staying cool, calm, and collected. But I had told her, well, I think the discipline and respect that I've learned in the military and all those values will really help me. And I wasn't the first pick for the job. She actually felt like maybe that wouldn't be a good approach for the kids. And I understood that. And especially now, 7 years into special education, which all my time, except for 1 year, was with kids with emotional and behavior needs. But I think my experience growing up and just those difficult situations in life, or maybe even bad examples in your immediate family or extended family, you learn different, and then other people can't relate to that,
Yeah.
I, there's a story in my book where I am at the high school table with a whole bunch of girls and eating my lunch, and they're all like, "Oh my God, I was up so late watching, whatever, Desperate Housewife, whatever was popular at the time." And I was like, "Oh, I was up late hiding from the repo man. We had all the lights off. He was shining his lights in the window." And they're all quiet looking at me. I don't even think most of them probably knew what the repo man was.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine chimes in and was like, "Ha, that happened to us last week, girl." And I was like, "Thank you." So that being able to connect with kids on that level and just kind of understand how the emotional side and your state of mind really and really just being a listener rather than helping them work through what is it that you need to do rather than just telling them.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So let's get into a little bit before you even joined in the first place. So you said that you joined, I noticed, in 2001. So was this
Yes.
before or after 9/11?
It was before. I joined in the spring, right after my 17th birthday. And I was a split op because I was in the Army National Guard. And so I did basic training between my junior and senior year. And
Hmm.
right when I got back, yeah, in the National Guard, you could do that. You could join at 17.
So you need like parents' permission or whatever it was to.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
And then like month into school, that happened. And I remember being in class and one of the teachers came in and like whispered into my geography teacher's ear, and his face just dropped and he turned on the TV, and I really had no idea like how that event would affect the future. And I didn't go right away. That was 2001, and we got mobilized February 2004, but only packed I was a truck driver, a transportation unit. So, like, we just packed all our stuff up, and then they just put us on like high alert and sent us home. And I had already
Hmm.
withdrew from college. So I was left struck like butt chuck. I was not happy about it.
So what made you want to join in the first place? Was it just something that you always thought about doing? Was it like a family thing? Did you just want to get out of your hometown? Like, what was your reasoning?
So recently, listening to one of your recent podcasts, I'm one of those people who like it was a family thing. A lot of
Yeah.
my family was in it, and so I admired that. And then I felt like a real badass when I wore my brother's Marine uniform, which it was really hard to even get him to allow me to wear it. For Halloween. I know that sounds ridiculous, but he was out, and so it's not like it was his active.
Yeah.
And it took a lot for me to get him to let me do that, but I loved wearing that uniform, and then on top of that, having the option of the school benefits, like I needed that, and so and it, things actually took a crazy turn. My senior year, I was student body president, and I was walking out of doing the announcements for the school, and one of the secretaries, who I hadn't talked to much, was like, "Hey, Jennifer, so and so's mom called and said you might be interested in this scholarship program," and handed me over the paperwork. And as I started to look into it, like I knew it was for low income families, like you had to be in a certain tax bracket, and like
Yep.
you had to do all these things for it. And so a couple weeks later, the superintendent called me in his office, and he said that they had chose me. So that was wild because then the National Guard, normally that scholarship would pay for your tuition. But
Yeah.
since I had joined the National Guard and the National Guard was going to pay for my tuition, they covered my room and board. And so like it was like, wow, all my
Hmm.
hard work really did fall into place, and I hardly paid much for schooling, and then kept following that plan,
Yeah.
even went on to get my master's in curriculum instruction, and then I got another master's in educational leadership. And then it was like last June that or May, with COVID and some other life circumstances, I was just like not feeling it. And I was like, I'm not where I want to be. And I decided I really need to get back into writing. I really like writing. I really like to express myself that way. And hey, maybe I could revisit what I've been working on for 10 years, 16 years. And so
Yeah.
that was it. I'm glad
So
I went with it.
I'm fascinated with this. So you go to boot camp, basic training. You're still a senior in high school when you're technically enlisted.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think like so for a lot of people you go to basic, then you go to your first duty station, and then you're kind of like, new to the military with a bunch of these people. You're kind of, I guess, still by yourself. Was anybody else in your school like that, or were you the only person?
Good question. One other person was because when I decided to choose what MOS, what job to do,
Yeah.
um, it was a friend of mine who was also telling me like he knew I was thinking about it. We I had known him since we went to church choir together and we were in the same class and he was like, "Well, you should think about the National Guard. I just joined. I'm in this unit. I'm a truck driver. They have a $6,000 sign-on bonus." And I was like, "Sign me up." And we could carpool. And so that's how I, really weighed out the pros and cons there and and decided to become a truck driver.
Okay, okay. So you join up, you've got that one other person. Now you said that you're going to school, obviously while you're doing this and you're starting to go to college. After 9/11 happened, you
Well,
know,
actually, I was still a senior.
well,
Sorry to
still a
interrupt.
senior, yeah. And now after 9/11 happened, are things going through your head like, "Oh shit, maybe this was like a bad idea?" Were you like, "Oh, maybe like my job's gonna change?" Like, were you nervous about anything in particular or?
Yeah, because I had no idea that we would be seeing to the potential wartime. Like
Yeah,
that was just in history books. And
yeah,
so and what's weird is in the miscommunication or, maybe my ignorance of being 17, I thought National Guard was like national, like like I'm gonna go help with floods and stuff.
yeah, like you represent the state that you're that's how I always thought of it.
Yeah,
Like when I joined, I had friends that joined the National Guard, and I was like, "Well, you guys just work." I'm originally from Massachusetts. I was like, "Well, you guys just do stuff in Massachusetts," and they're like, "No, like I just got mobilized to go to Afghanistan." It's like, "Oh
right.
shit."
Right. So yeah, I was kind of afraid, but at the same time, like I was naive and thought, like, do you guys need me to work on trucks back here before you guys send them over? Like, and really at first there wasn't much talk of it, going to drill. It was just what you were seeing on TV and um, how the first fleet was going into Baghdad and the Green Zone. So, yeah, it didn't become real until so I went to AIT that following summer, and that
After you graduate your high
yes,
school? Okay.
yes. Um, Went to AIT, and then I got back and I went to college, and I made it to February till they mobilized us, and I was told to withdraw, but when we didn't go after a week, there was a lot of my battle buddies that got to go back to school, but since I had withdrew, I think it had something to do with the fact that I had like Pell Grant and MAP Grant, like because of those situations. I so
Yeah.
then I was struck back in my hometown, making really great choices, not and just waiting to go back to school. And then I enrolled at a community college about an hour from my house and started the spring or start went in the summer, started in the fall, and then I got mobilized again.
Okay.
That
Okay.
time for real. Like they
For
called us on Veterans Day of 2003, and our first day of our deployment was December 7th.
Okay. So I wanna get into a little bit of, like, your mindset around this time. So the crazy thing for me that you were still in high school, if I had gone to boot camp and was officially, like, enlisted, and then I went back to high school, I probably would have been, like, the most annoying fucking kid on the planet.
Mhm.
Um, so, you're going through all this training, you're getting ready to deploy. What do you I guess now you went over to a company out of Paris. Now, did you get mobilized to Paris or did you get mobilized to the Middle East?
I got mobilized to the Middle East. Like
Okay.
my unit is out of
Of
Paris,
Paris.
Illinois,
Got
Paris,
it.
Illinois. And so like all of us drive there, which I was actually before we got mobilized, I was in the detachment, which is
Got it.
like an hour from there where just one platoon drilled. And then on drill weekends, we would usually usually convoyed to Paris, Illinois. So when we all had to report, we all reported to Paris, Illinois on December 7th. And we were deployed to right outside of, in between Baghdad and Abu Ghraib at a small mortar tent called Log Base Sites,
Oh,
nicknamed Mortaritaville, which we totally jacked this Mortaritaville sign. Like I think the maintenance guys brought it back in one of our connexes. And so
that's
that
great.
sign lives on, but it really was Mortaritaville. That sign was there before we got there.
So what was your I've talked to a bunch of people that get over to the Middle East, boots on ground. What is your mindset when you're first getting there? First of all, like, is it what you expected it to be like? Was it just completely different than you thought it would be? What is it like when you first get over there?
So when we first got there, we were in Kuwait for like a month or 3 weeks because we were waiting on our trucks to get over on barge. And so you walk like a quarter of a mile or a half a mile just to go to chow in sinking sand. And that base, I mean, it was kind of boring. It was real strange to um some of the things that you were getting accustomed to and like finding sand in all these different spots. But I would say the day we rolled into Log Base Sites, Iraq, it was March 16th. And I what's crazy is I had no idea what to expect. And
Yeah.
we had seen different bases on the way where there were like tents and stuff. Like in Kuwait, we stayed in a big tent. There they had these large tin buildings. We get out, ground guide our trucks to be parked. We unload and catch some chow and then like go start bunking down on our cots. And they said like the next day around noon, right after chow, we would be trained on mortar attacks. Like here are all these bunkers. We're going to be trained. Right before chow time, we got mortared. Um, Clearly, they were watching the new units coming in, and
Yep.
they caught us right then. And we lost our first person in that first 12-24 hours of
Oh shit.
yeah, and, so I just remember, like, and so by this time, I was already trying to run my sweet game on my now husband. So I'm, like, in his room, like, talking to him, chatting with him, and there's tons of people around us, and, um, we start getting mortared, and I just remember hitting the ground, just knowing to do that, and everyone's doing the same thing, and they just keep falling and you're just hesitant, and then finally there's a pause and I just start juking to the exit. We're all, no one's
Yeah.
and then you hear them falling again and like we're all just still running, and I make a beeline out of the door. I come around and you could see like dust 25-50 meters away, like clearly now looking back on it, it was the dust from the mortars. And I remember sometime that first night, March 16th, somebody had mentioned like this is going to be first platoon's bunker, this is going to be second, which sounds so ridiculous now, but like this is where you'll take accountability. And so I remember running around the corner and I leaped over the entrance because they were underground. I leaped over the entrance of two bunkers before I was like, oh yeah, this one's mine. Like that seems so stupid looking back on it. But and then like they were full of like a foot of water. And so we were all our faces like, but at the same time, it was also like, that was crazy sweet, man. Like,
Yeah.
what was that?
I was gonna say the first time, obviously it's different for me. I was in the Navy, so it's like, any encounters that we had were always at sea.
Right.
And there's almost like a what the fuck moment that you go through, I think, for every service member, where it goes through your head for a second. You're like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
And maybe a part of me is like, what the fuck am I even doing here? And then that kind of like quickly goes away because it has to go away.
Right.
But did you have that moment like in that particular time?
Yes, yes. I definitely, had it then, and honestly, like, when it comes to a non-combat zone, like, first joining the Army, so back to the spring of
Yeah.
being a junior, when I went to one of my first drills, and, like I said, I had joined with my friend under my friend Billy, so he got promoted, and, uh, let's see, I got to drill and I don't know anybody, and I'm not even sure he was there at the time, but I got like a seat up to the window because we're about to take some National Guard bus to Paris. And on steps this, who's now my husband, but um, I saw him that day and I didn't see him for a couple years. But on steps this crazy redhead talking about, I'm driving the bus today. You're welcome for the complimentary music. And he pops in like this death metal at 7:30 in the morning. And that's when I was thinking, oh shit. Like, what did I get myself into? And it's crazy that like and then he never showed back up. He actually has like a crazy story himself where he basically in Hobbs classy style puts in his 2-week notice and never returns until we get mobilized, and then he's like, "Oh, they can't go without me," and like volunteers to go.
Hmm. I think the funny thing about stories like this is, you know, like when I had my first like oh shit moment, I'm still pretty new to the Navy. You're pretty new to the Army at this point.
Mhm.
But when you look around at the more experienced people and they're just like super calm about it, that
Mhm.
was always mind blowing to me. Like the first time I had a 50 cal pointed at me, it was another, ship out to sea. We're replenishing our fuel. So there's two ships with like the cables across, and then these small boats are going in between us with 50 cals pointed at us, and they're like
Right.
circling us. I remember freaking out. Like, I don't want to be holding this line on the ship. Like, I want to go inside. And one of the E7s I was out there, he's like, "Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it." I was like,
Uh-huh.
he's pointing a 50 cal at me. How should I not be worried about this? But it was always crazy to me. And then you kind of, evolve, and then you're like, yeah, whatever.
Right. I'm
But
sure that's how, like, the new rotation felt as they were coming in, coming into Mortaritaville, Log Bay sites, they'd hear these sounds and we'd be like, "Oh, no, that's too far away. Like, it's fine. You don't have to go to the bunker."
yeah,
You start to know all those different sounds between the rocket, a mortar, small arms fire, an IED in the distance. So
yeah,
you probably do look like the crazy veterans that are like, "Oh no, it's fine. Can I get your lighter?"
yeah. So, was it always as eventful as your first day over there, or was it fairly, calm in between, or
No, it was, I mean, by eventful, we did receive like over around, it's like 168, almost 200 mortar rounds. However, they have sloppy aim, so usually it was outside of the wire. I shouldn't even say that, but, it's true. It
it's
was
true?
outside of the yeah, it was outside of the wire, and, like, there was just a couple times where, it landed on the base, and, um, of the so our unit, we lost 5 soldiers, and, 3 of them were from mortar attacks on our base. So they definitely are like, September 5th, 2004, they rocked us. They walked them in, and they just happened to get really good aim that day. They got lucky that day,
Yeah,
right at noon is like, we're not on a high status, so no one's wearing Kevlar or flak jacket, except unless people were choosing to do that. Some people did do
yeah.
that, and they hit us right at lunchtime as people were walking back from chow, and we had like around 30 injured and 2 killed that day.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we were the main missions that we drove were gun security for the KBR mail carriers. So
Hmm.
we just spaced ourselves out in their convoys and drove all over Iraq, like from Balad and Baghdad, TQ, the Green Zone. I'm forgetting Al Assad, So we did a lot of so it was eventful, I would say.
Yeah. Now, what about your in between time? Because we know, when you're deployed, you do have that time in between when you're not doing anything. What were some of the things that you like to do to pass time over there?
Watch movies on a laptop, and then I did go to the MWR and work out intermittently. I didn't really get down on like playing games there. Didn't really get down on being on the phone or even the computer a lot. Just chatting with friends, really, like having all of us small town and big town people thrown into a National Guard unit that, our time together was few and far between until this deployment. And now then we were
Yeah.
just getting to like really know each other. And so, in Iraq, when it comes to movies, I binge watched Friends for the first time over there.
Oh, there you go.
So, like, my heart broke when the last time you're in Iraq, you're so far from home. This is bullshit. And then here's the last episode. You guys are pissing me off right
Yeah.
now.
I remember the ever important hard drive. I still have my hard drive from the ship, and I don't even think it works anymore, but I just can't get rid of it because it was just like this was my deployments. And now I don't even think I can illegally download the movies like I used to or
Oh,
the TV shows. You basically
see,
give your computer viruses just to be able to watch that one show.
yes, that's what you meant. I have a hard drive just full of tons of pictures. That's what I
See,
was.
my biggest regret about the service is that I didn't take that many pictures. And
Yeah,
I hate that. Like, because at the
yeah.
time I was like, "Oh, that's stupid." But then I was like, I'm so angry now that I didn't do that.
hmm No, I'm straight up nerd when it comes to pictures. I like to call myself the historian. When people look at me crazy, I mean, I don't do it a lot, but if people look at me weird, like seriously, pictures, like you're gonna appreciate it.
Yeah, one day, now I know better. Now I'm like always
Mhm.
taking pictures of my kids or the things I'm doing now because now I know, years down the line, that's when I'm gonna want that.
Yeah,
So you said you met your husband over there. So is did you guys start to form a relationship when you were deployed, or was that more when you got
before.
back? Oh,
Actually, it
before.
was before. It was like in those first couple of months. Like, right from the beginning, like, pretty much when I saw him, I was like, "Oh my god, it's that crazy ginger from the bus a couple years ago." And he just has this smile that radiates, and his personality is just, it's awesome. It's everyone just really likes to be in his space. Sometimes I like to knock him out, but anyways, so I already was intrigued, and we started talking right away, and then became friends, became bunk mates from time to time. And we were the same rank, so even though it's still frowned upon, like, we didn't put our business out there much, like
At
our
least it's not fraternization or
yeah,
anything you
no,
guys could get in trouble for.
no. And so we were pretty much an item before we even shipped off. And then yeah, we did live nearby each other, like in our barracks, our two towers there at the base. But then like some shady stuff started happening, like with people fraternizing, and you know bad, people to where people
Yeah,
have to get sent home and
of
stuff.
course. Of
And
course.
so they moved all the females from this base. So there was probably a total of 5 to 6 National Guard and Army Reserve units. They took all the females from all of our units and put us into one melting pot building of bullshit. And man, we were just separated by cubicles, and like our unit got put on night missions. We did most of our stuff at night after a while. And so all the other chicks on the base, they were on daytime. And so like you had no option but just to sit in your room and like do something quietly, watch movies, read a book, go hang out outside in the bunker.
Yeah.
And so then I would just kind of see him intermittently, either at chow or when I walked over and said hi, or at our platoon meetings. And yeah. But he got blown up by a roadside bomb on October 6th. And my battle buddy Jessica Covey, she died that day too in the same truck.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was our fifth person that we lost, and so the truck actually landed, like the truck flipped and landed on him. And it's crazy because, you know, a 5-ton truck on someone. It's crazy to think that. So we had these steel boxes that we had, we when we once we got to Kuwait, they sent us somewhere and they basically put these welded steel boxes in them where they mounted the 50 cals. And Ryan was a 50 cal gunner, and so he would stand in this box on the back of the truck, and that's where his turret was,
Okay.
in this box. And so when the truck flipped, he got trapped under that box, and it all just was right here. So like didn't touch any other part of his body. The
Wow.
truck, all the pressure from the truck was right here on his face, right on his upper jaw and his nose. The x-ray is absolutely crazy, but yeah, it knocked out like most of his teeth, crushed his
Jesus.
jaw. Yeah. And his story is just nuts. Like he remembers like a lot of being awake. Like at the time he could hear them talking about like, well, maybe we should hook it up and drag it off, and he was like, hell no, do not drag this off my face.
Yeah.
They end up I think a Marine unit, he thinks, they arrived and jacked it up, and they got him out of there. And they took him to the Baghdad hospital. And then, like, early the next morning, I was surprised that my battle buddy came in and he said, "Hey, Buff," because I was Buffington before, so they all called me Buff. He said, "Hey, Buff, we're gonna make a mission to the Green Zone. Do you want to go see Hobbs?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, I was surprised they would ask me that, you know.
Yeah.
And so I jumped out of bed and I went to go see him, and I was super anxious. And that guy that woke me up, he was just kind of trying to prepare me for it. He was on the mission, and so he was like, "I just want to kind of prepare you, I think when I saw him, he didn't have a nose, and I was like, okay, I'm just like trying to process it all.
Yeah.
And once I get up to like and I'm so scared, so scared. But I'm also just completely traumatized by the night of crying because we lost our homegirl. So
Yeah.
once I heard he was alive, that was like amazing. Like, okay, like he's going to be okay. So once I got to the threshold of the door at the Green Zone Hospital and I saw him, it just kind of like took a bunch of weight off of me. Like, okay, there he is in person. Like,
Yeah.
okay. And then I went up to the side of his bed, and he woke up and he said something to me. And then, like, within the first 3 minutes, he was like, "Do I have any hot nurses?" And I was like, "Oh, he's gonna be just fine, you guys. He's gonna be just fine."
Now, one of the questions that I ask everybody too, is, like the cringeworthy things that you look back on, you're like, oh, that was kind of crazy. And your two answers were great. I loved those answers. So one of them completely caught me off guard, where you would eat the tops of matches for your MREs to keep mosquitoes away. Is that actually like a superstitious thing that they do
S
over there, or does it
actually
work?
actually, I didn't even really have to. I may have done it over there a little bit. I was thinking like more in the field, like in Fort Ball, Louisiana, and even now, like if I go camping or something, it
It
totally
actually
works for
works?
me. It works for me. Like
I
I don't.
didn't know if that was like a hazing thing. Like we used to say in
It very well could be.
because yeah, so in boot camp when you have to write your name and stamp all your stuff with your name and your
Yes.
all that shit. So I remember like to haze other people, anybody that fell for it would be like, oh, you have to drag your mattress to the Navy exchange and you have to stamp your name on your mattress. And it's like people would do people you occasionally you'd see like the one kid like dragging a mattress across the base and you're like, oh no. So I didn't know if it was something like that
If it is, I'm
or if
still
it
doing it.
legitimately worked.
I don't know. If it is, they got me good because here I am 20 years later still doing it. But no, I I heard that one time out in the field from someone else, just one other person. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's hazing, but
And
I
maybe it
definitely,
started as haze and then it kind of worked, so people are like, "Oh shit."
yeah, I definitely had fun, doing jokes on people to keep things interesting, and actually my friend Jessica Covey was really good at it too. We
Were
like
there any that stand out when you look back, like some of the pranks or maybe not necessarily hazings because I know that's frowned upon, but like, that you can look back like, "Oh, that was a good one that we did."
Yeah, there is a couple that come to mind. Like right before we went to Iraq and we were so bored in Fort McCoy, we basically took the one of our friends, our battle buddy's weapon, and put it under her mattress or under one of our mattresses, and we had the first sergeant involved in on it, and he called her to the
Oh,
office
no.
and was like, "Have you seen your weapon?" And she was like, yeah, let me go." Well, because she was trying to get it before she went to go see him. So then she starts freaking out that she doesn't have it to go see him. And we had her in tears by the time we were like, sorry, like, here you go. And
Those are
she,
brutal.
yeah, she didn't find it very funny, but she's still a good friend now, so we like to look back on it. But Kavi turned things around on me one time. That little shit. We were playing pranks on people all day at drill. I think this was mm, before the deployment, like just at drill one time, maybe even in that week where we had to pack all our stuff up and we were doing PT tests and whatnot. We were telling everybody, like, hey, you got a phone call in the office, the headquarters. Like, we were telling everybody that and sending like everyone in there for a phone call. So then this tramp turns around and gets in on it. And like, next thing you know, one of my sergeants comes up and was like, "Hey, Buff, they're doing piss tests in the front office and your name was randomly picked. You got to go take a test." I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "All right." And I was like, "Okay." Like, and I'm like, this is before Iraq. Yeah. So I'm freshman, sophomore in college, you know, making great choices and nothing crazy, but like I just knew like this would be interesting. Like, how's
Yeah,
this gonna go here?
got it.
And I start walking in, and all of a sudden, I look over at her, and she's whispering with my sergeant, and she just covers her mouth, points at me, and just starts losing it, laughing. And he's laughing. I was like, "Oh, it is on. I'm gonna get you back." So,
Yeah, those are when I look back, like the joking and the pranks and all that stuff, that's what made everything, I guess, so fun. You kind of pass the time in between, but it's also stuff that you can just like never do now as a civilian.
uh
Like
huh.
you can't joke and prank people the way, like
Oh
you
no.
used to do it with your buddies back when you're in.
No, it's definitely frowned upon, and it's could be like you guys. We all find things like that are like almost morbid, kind of funny, like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I definitely put my foot in my mouth, especially like in my profession, like because that's just my personality. And I understand that it's not exactly the most professional thing in a teaching profession, but I'm just trying to liven it up a little bit. Like in the
Yeah.
here would be an example. It's not morbid, but it's so funny, and this is just my personality. So in the fall, and we've been in person all year.
Oh,
So
wow.
in the fall, yeah, big deal there. In the fall, we were just got all the kids on the bus. Like it's just the teachers walking back in, and I'm walking back into the building with two other people, and someone says, "Hobbs, your hair is getting so long." And I said, "You should see my bush." And then I was like, "God, I really need to practice my social skills and remember what environment I'm in."
Yeah. Yeah, we used to do some pretty, I guess you could consider morbid. We convince, on the ship, we do sometimes what's called a night ops, which is where you want to get something off the ship that's stuck
Mhm.
in your space, but you obviously like can't just bring it across the ship when you're in port. So you throw it over the side of the ship, but you do it at night so nobody sees. But the problem is that at night, if you're topside and you hear something fall into the water, the first thing that goes into your mind is like, oh shit, somebody just fell overboard, right? And it can be like a
Right.
whole big thing. So we convinced one of the new guys to do a night ops. But when we went out there, we snuck up behind him and threw something over the edge before he did. And we ran
Yeah.
down and grabbed him. We're like, oh no, like Derek just fell overboard. And maybe it wasn't that funny like
Uh,
afterwards, but he
no,
thought
that
somebody
I
fell
would
over
have a
the
heart
side of the
attack.
ship. Yeah. But yeah, you
The
can't do
best
things like that.
the best prank that I actually wasn't a part of, but thank goodness they caught it on film, so it, like, lives on as a legend. We have a guy in our platoon who we love so much, but he's also an easy target. He's always been an easy target because, like, he loves Zelda and he loved, going outside, like, by himself and practicing, like, tai chi or something, so
Okay.
we all love him so much, but like, he's an easy target sometimes, so he, like, fell asleep one night in Iraq, and the whole guys barracks donned their gas mask and woke him up going, gas,
Oh,
gas, gas. And
oh
it's
no.
all caught on camera. And like he's like fumbling around for it and he gets it on. And then like everyone starts running out to the bunker and he like passes by a bunch of people like laughing that don't have gas masks on.
Of
And he's like
course.
looking around. Yeah, you definitely have to make things fun and exciting over there, and I feel like we really did a good job of growing together and just really enjoying our time as hard as it was, and yeah.
So how long total were you over there for before you came back?
Um, well, we got to Kuwait in February, we got to Iraq in March 16th, and we left February.
Okay. So
So,
about a year total that you guys,
yeah.
the whole
It
thing.
was a 15-month deployment, but it was a year.
Okay. Now when you come back home, what are you doing, I guess, while you're still, back to the reserves? You're going back to the unit. Are you going back to school at that point? Like, what's your
Yes.
situation? Okay.
Yes, I kinda just dove right back in again, like, just trying to, like, feel pressured on, like, what am I supposed to do right now? Okay, like, I guess I get back to what I was supposed to do, like, going to school, and so I enrolled right away and got an apartment and got a job and just started doing all that right away and going to drill 1 week in a month. That was kinda hard to see people starting to get out, because they were all pretty much a lot of people on similar timelines as myself, so they had their 6 years in, so it's like 6 active, 2 inactive. So people started to leave and the whole environment that started to change, and the things that I loved about the military, especially like just the hard year we had been through, like slowly all that was looking a lot different and just all these other people that were around and didn't deploy with us and so many people that did that were getting out. And so I ended up re-enlisting mostly because, well, most of it was because there was just part of it I didn't want to let go of.
Yeah.
And but then another part of it was in the National Guard, they tell you 4 years of school. That has to be while you're active. So if
Hmm.
you end up getting mobilized and you don't get your outside of your mobilizations, if you don't get those 4 years in, you miss out on them. So unless you re-enlist, you won't finish those 4 years.
Okay. So
Does
there's
that
like
make
weird,
sense?
yeah, it's like weird caveats that they have. I there's like similar stuff. I know I had gone to college before I joined, but I didn't
Uh-huh.
get to join as an officer. I was enlisted, but they said, "Oh, if you join enlisted, we'll pay your student loans." But then it
Uh-huh.
was like you had to have so much time active and at sea for it to actually count towards like paying back. It was like a weird
Right.
thing that they didn't tell
Right.
me until later when I figured it out.
Yeah,
But
they're good at
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
since I joined so young in high school, like I was already a couple years in before I even, after my
Yeah.
deployment, I didn't have time to get those 4 years done. So I re-enlisted and things didn't look the way they did. And then I was definitely struggling with PTSD, and like Ryan was too. And like we were
Now, are
on
you
and
guys
off.
married at that point, or are you guys just
No.
dating, or?
So he got he got hit on October 6th, um and then like the next 2 years were a mess. We were on and off. He was going through things. I was going through things. He couldn't understand me. I couldn't understand him. And he was on med hold and just being
Yeah, those are the worst.
manhandled. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
on top of it, like getting a bone graft and having his jaw rebuilt and like just seeing a whole nother life take shape. And then in that time, he texted me and said, Jen. And I said, yeah. And we were broke up. And he said, I'm going to be a dad. And I was like, oh man. Like, so it was crazy. It took my breath away. But in the end, like having his son saved his life. He was in a, he definitely saved his life. And so then we were broke up for 5 years, and here we are now, married with, we have 3 kids, my stepson, and then we have 2 girls together. And
There you go.
the post-traumatic growth continues for
Yeah, so
sure.
I definitely want to talk about that too. Now, you said that obviously you recognize that you had like PTSD type symptoms and stuff. You know, are you actively getting help at that point, or is this like, I know for me, active duty, I felt there was a really negative stigma towards, I guess, seeking help while you're still active, right?
Hmm.
Are you seeking help at this point? Are you kind of putting it on the back burner because of the stigma that surrounds it in the military, or what are you going through at that point?
Um, I I didn't seek help for a while, and then it was probably 2006 that I decided to. However, the way they manage it, with just kind of giving you medicine
Yeah,
and then like some people trying to talk to you, but you can only relate to some. And so I tried, and it really wasn't until like 2008 or 9 where I had someone at the VA that focused on um, some type of therapy, where like she sent me home to write down the most traumatic experience, and then I had to come
okay.
back and read it out loud. So like that really helped. That
That's the type of therapy that I recently just CPT, right? Cognitive
Yeah,
processing therapy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that was the best thing so far that had helped me. Like that really helped kind of jumpstart and like reconstruct your thoughts,
Yeah.
because you got them all twisted. You don't want to have them that way. So and then from there, I like now I still continue. I go sometimes. I still have some issues with PTSD, but I also understand, like I like that it's more growth, and not so much a disorder, like, but just like something that you live with. I guess you could call it a disorder, like diabetes and stuff like that. That's, you have to manage things well and understand like when to think and respond rather than just reacting. And it's just kind of
Sure.
so it's growth, but it does fall under that PTSD category.
Yeah. So at this point, now you said you stayed in until like 2010, right?
Hmm.
So what made you not want to do like a full 20? Did you know off the bat that you weren't going to do that, or
I always thought that I would. I always thought that
really?
I would definitely do 20, like um,
What rank were you at this time?
E5.
E5. Okay.
I would have gotten higher, but I got demoted in Iraq for admitting to drinking.
Oh, fun.
That was a messed up situation. I was thinking of it again when I was listening to one of your podcasts with the guy who, you just had him on the other day.
Oh, yeah, Mike from Open Sea Leather.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, where he went to Captain's Mast.
when they're like,
Yeah.
"Are your parents proud of you?" And he's like, "Yes, yes, sir." But, yeah, so I was offered E6 to move to a different unit, but again, I wanted that feeling, that bond that I had with my unit. I wanted that to continue. And actually our group that I served with, we formed a, and by we, I mean there was like a core group that of guys that were getting together, and then they opened it up when they heard that us girls were feeling a little left out, little punks, and then they started
Yeah,
opening it up, and like then at that like gathering, little camp out, they were like, people have talked about wanting to make this a 50C19, like a state recognized group, and we all voted, and
cool.
so we made the veterans a log based sites. But we are thinking about like opening it up more because like we really want to help veterans, and so you're limited when you're just,
Yeah.
we can all continue working and being together, like, and connecting with one another, but when it comes to giving service back to other people, then that's going to require looking at everyone.
Now, I wanna talk for a second. When you get in trouble in the Army, like, I know the process for the Navy, and then, talking to Mike last time, he was also in the Navy. So for us,
Yeah.
it's, a DRB, which I've been to my fair share of DRBs, which is just getting yelled at by a bunch of E7s and you just gotta take it. Then you go to XOI, which is just your executive officer yelling at you, and then you go to captain's mast, which is like captain of the ship. It's a big deal. Is it a similar process in the Army when you get in trouble, or is it
I don't
different?
feel like it was that many steps there, and as a matter of fact, it was a weird situation. Like, I don't think that my first sergeant and my captain were like, oh, so disappointed in me. What had actually
Yeah.
happened was, I was about to turn 21, and like we were in the last couple weeks of being in Iraq. So
Oh, no.
this is like end of January 2005,
Oh,
and
such bad
we're
timing.
going to be leaving soon. And some unit came across a Connex that had some wine in it, and so they let us have a little bit of it. And I'm thinking, like, I'm about to be 21. Yay. Like, let me have a drink of this. So, anyways, we got back to we had curfew, because, people earned us a curfew at
Of
this
course.
point.
Of
And
course.
so, we get back and we go to bed, and in the morning, one of my I think my bunkmate at the time, like, she hadn't gone with me, and so she was asking me like how it went. I was like, man, they totally had some wine that they found, and I'm telling her about it. Well, I think at that point in my book I call her Sergeant Blue Falcon. You guys have, okay.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, she's not sergeant, she's Lieutenant Blue Falcon. Lieutenant Blue Falcon must have overheard, and she doesn't know who it is. She just knows it's one of these females in these cubicles. So she pulls us aside later that day, all of us girls that live in that vicinity of her, and she asks us, and I mean, honestly, and we've talked now, like at the reunion, like we're all working on growth. So even though I call her, and she may hear this, like even though I call her, Lieutenant Blue Falcon, like we've all grown, and we can all look it back on our faults and whatnot. But she did do some shady stuff. And so when other people did shady stuff, like I was shocking that she would be all over it. So anyway, she
You're a bigger person than me because I hold grudges like a motherfucker.
yeah, I did for a while. I actually just saw her for the first time in 16 years, like a year ago. But she so she pulls all of us girls aside. We're all, like 20 years old. She doesn't inform my platoon sergeant, all the sergeants and the first sergeant and the captain. She doesn't say anything to any of them, and just says, um, were you all in your bed at curfew last night? And we're like, yeah, yeah. And she was like, are you sure? And we're like, mm-hmm, yeah. She's like, okay, because there's an investigation going down with the whatever company. And if you were over there, mm-mm. And I was like, here it comes. It's coming. Oh shit.
Oh, no.
My honesty. I was like, well, I was over there. Like, and she was like, were you drinking? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, you know, that was real stupid. That was real dumb. And she just walked away. And I don't even know who she went and told at that time, but I hear like she just bypassed. She was trying to make buddy buddy with the
Oh
battalion.
no, she jumped the chain.
She did. She totally jumped like my
Oh,
entire
ugh.
company, went and told them. And so by the time my unit found out, so on the day to go get served my Article 15, um, it is my 21st birthday. On my 21st birthday.
It's a nice present.
And yeah, so and I'm waiting for the first sergeant to come out and walk over with my captain. And here comes Lieutenant Blue Falcon, sits down next to me and goes, "Don't let this get you down, Buff. Just take your punishment and just move on, girl." And
Fucking
I'm sitting
right.
there thinking, what are you talking about right now? I didn't say anything to her, and which in the past I, you know, kind of overstepped my soldier boundaries and had said stuff to her at other times. Those are other stories. But anyways, then we walked over. Oh, the first sergeant, he was like, "Sorry, Buff. You know, if I'd have caught you, you'd just be sweeping the sidewalks because that's what people did. Like other people that actually got
Yeah,
caught."
you don't fuck people over.
Yeah, and other people got caught because like they were being loud idiots, not because they admitted to
Yeah.
drinking some wine like the night before. And so, yeah, I had to go stand at parade rest, and the battalion is new at the time because we're about to leave. They're just getting there. They don't
Mhm.
know any of us, and I have to stand there, and my they go around to all my leadership and they all say great things about me, and they get to Blue Falcon and she says all this good shit about me, and I was like, "What? Okay, okay." And like I'm just thinking this is so stupid, and like they dismiss me, and right as I'm leaving, the sergeant major, she was a female, she's like, uh well, at this point now I'm bumped back down to private first class. She's like, "PFC, come in here." And I was like, "Shit, gosh, like, isn't this enough?" And
Yeah.
I get in there and she's like, Eddie's, sit down." And she like proceeded to tell me like basically the army needs women like me. And after everything she just heard my leaders say about me, she's like, "There's always gonna be some stuff like this in the military." She's like, "You need to just shake it off." And like it was, and then she reached out and shook my hand and handed me her coin. It was the coolest coin I ever got. Just at the best time I needed it. You know, I needed her to tell me that.
Now, do those types of speeches, like, work for you? When somebody's like, "Hey, I know that you just got, like, your rank taken away and in trouble, but, you know, we really need people like you." For me, I
No.
would have been like, you can fuck yourself."
Yeah, no, no. Now I think now that I'm older and I just kind of see how
It's
things
such a
work.
condescending thing.
People try and like butter you up, like, "But you're
Yeah.
so good at it." Oh, like, okay, yep, you just want me to stick around and do that job.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, those things drive me, especially, like, going out of your chain of command. It brings up the, I guess, the talk about leadership. It's like what makes a good leader versus a bad leader.
Absolutely.
And I had one of my old Chiefs E7s on the podcast, and he caught me doing something that if anybody else had caught me doing it, I would have lost rank. I would have been put on restriction,
Right,
like the 45-45 half month's pay times two shit. And he was just like, he did like, divisional type punishment for me. Like, hey,
right,
every single day you're going to meet with me. We're going to do this, rather than like ruining my career, which
right.
is, like, that's what a good leader does. They don't just like take everything from you because you make one mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, the new battalion commander, I remember when he was saying that, like, "We're just going to demote you. We're not gonna give you the fine because we know that, you know, you need this money," or, you know, and I was like, "But in the end, you're demoting me."
So
And
now I'm losing a lot of money.
yeah, like,
Give me
so
the fine. Shit.
I know, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, now that you're separated and you're working as a teacher, and you're going through all this stuff, I know you mentioned like PTSD versus post traumatic growth. So, like, talk about that. I've never heard the term post traumatic growth before. So,
I
like,
didn't I didn't until last summer. After I decided like I was going to get back into writing, I decided, because of the book that I'd been working on, well, not doing a good job working on for 16 years, I wanted to enlighten myself and educate myself to where I just started working toward it, and not just sitting there thinking that I'm an expert, or just sharing a story. I want people to be able to get something from it, whether that's they can make a connection or they can grow themselves or they have a family member or friend and it gives them a little bit of understanding to kind of like,
Sure.
oh yeah, that reminds me of Billy Bob. But so I read Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma by Ken Falk and I think it's Josh Goldberg. And it's just really awesome. I mean, one of the things that really hit home, a lot of it does, but it says they did this study with people that were prisoners of war from, I'm not sure which war, maybe Vietnam or
Yeah.
maybe just over a period of time,
Sure.
and they compared them to other soldiers who had come back that were not prisoners of war. And the people that were prisoners of war had um, really experienced a change in like 5 areas of their life. And that was like a spiritual connection, relationships with others, like having hope for the future,
Sure.
and a couple of other things that come. It was just from the people that I know and that I've met, like especially on this deployment or other people that have experienced um, trauma or combat trauma, it does change you. It changes you a lot and it makes you have a different appreciation for life, whether you go through those periods of time where obviously you're taking things for granted and becoming a little complacent. But um, so that book talks about the growth in all of it and identifying like where other people see you as for like oh, he's got PTSD, because you're jumpy or you respond to something a certain way. The book talks about how like those are our warrior reflexes and like you're trained to use those in a certain
Yeah.
environment, they're completely appropriate. And then boom, you're back transitioning to a life where they look like PTSD or they look like you haven't returned or, like whatever
Yeah.
people say about it. And really, it's just your way or reflexes that you've been trained in, whether it's something small like jumping or like yelling. I always tell my husband, like, stop yelling. He's like, I'm just talking. I'm just talking. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
That's something that I talk about a lot in therapy with my therapist. She's like, these aren't necessarily like symptoms. They present themselves, but you're trained a certain way, and now you just have to train yourself that there's like times and places for this to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, and then on that, they say in there, like, responding and not reacting,
Yep.
so. And now I enrolled in, I had told a friend about it, actually the girl who was my husband's driver for most of the year in Iraq, but then on that particular night she wasn't. um she read the book and then she ended up enrolling in now they have like a class, a little workshop to go through, and so I just signed up for that. But what's amazing is she works for the VA, um, and they're going to bring in that program to her VA. She works down like in St. Louis, and so
Nice.
that's really cool just to
Yeah.
get away from putting a band-aid on wounds or even just passing medications, like having a good program or a plan, or even like we were talking about the cognitive um, program where you write stuff out.
Yeah.
It's hopefully they start helping people more than they have over the years, especially back to our Vietnam vets and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. Now, about this book, like when do you think it's going to be ready? What
July
is
1st.
July 1st? Okay.
Yes.
So now when you're getting ready to release it, is it going to be available like Amazon everywhere, or like what's your plan with that?
Actually, my publishing team, like they have a really good grasp on all that. But yes, it's going to be on Amazon and on a couple other websites and then eventually on audiobook. So we're working on getting all those squared away. It's at the editor right now, and then it'll come back and then I'll edit it one more time. Been thinking about adding a couple of pictures in there just because some real pictures because I know like some people like that connection. I
Yeah.
haven't completely decided on that, but and right now we're kind of working on um, where to go from here, like because as opposed to just like diving right in and wanting like writing my second book, I really want to, again, like I said, like figure out how I could best serve others. And after a lot of conversations with my book coach, who's also my book publisher, I think we've found like exactly where I want to be. And I think that's to be um, a tool or helpful for the families and friends of combat vets because when I think about it, we were having a conversation and she asked me like, okay, so if you could, when I was trying to identify like the audience that I want to reach, and she said, like, if you could pick between these, would you pick um, combat veterans that you served with? Would you pick any combat veterans, or would you pick the family and friends of combat veterans? And I said, the family and friends. She said, I knew it. I knew you would. And so then I just had this breakthrough of like, yes, that's exactly where I need to be because I can't be everything and none of us can be everything a veteran or a person needs. You need to equip the ones that love them and their support system to like to move mountains and
Yeah.
make changes. So I'm really excited about that.
So when the book comes out, and just like you in general now, you want to tell my listeners like where they can look up more about you, more about your book, all of those things?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for asking. So I think in your in the post will also be the
Yeah,
my
I'll plug
my
all that stuff as
yeah.
well. So,
I I have a YouTube platform that I really am needing to jump on there and get shaken on that. So that's kind of new on there, but it's author Jennifer Hobbs, and I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as author Jennifer Hobbs. But you can also visit my website at www.thejenniferhobbs.com and subscribe to my newsletter. And that way you can kind of stay in the know about not to mention, like I said, I want to be able to reach others and have conversations and those uncomfortable conversations. And that doesn't have to be anything live. Like if I'm also, like I said, a step parent. And so coming back from a combat zone and Ryan and I breaking up and then getting back together, like life is we all have our share of challenges and
yeah.
um so I'm a good listener. But yeah, so I think that's yeah, my website. And I told Lauren this is totally my book coach. This is one of the questions I've definitely had to get used to. Like it's kind of crazy where things are going. The first time she interviewed me was like, tell everybody how we could get a hold of you. And
Yeah.
I joked around with her, like, should I have said my phone number? Probably not a good idea.
Now, just the last thing for me, when you look back on your time in the military, what do you think was your favorite thing about being in the army and your least favorite thing about being in the army?
Hmm. Um, wow, that's let's see. My favorite thing is the the relationships I have with the
Yeah.
people I served with by far, like, and their lifetime relationships. I pretty much talk to one of them almost every single day. Oh, and I guess I could say my husband too. Um, and my least favorite thing besides shower shoes,
Oh shit.
I would say,
Oh shit.
I would say, uh, mm, I'm sure I can think of something.
Like I know for me and my buddies, we did an episode where we ranked like the worst things about being in the Navy, and my least favorite thing in the world is like standing like a fire watch or something like that, and then just like nobody comes to relieve you, so you're just stuck with a fucking weapon for 8 hours, and nobody comes and relieves you, and then you're just stuck there longer. Just like the standing
Yes.
around doing just not like that, just is my least favorite thing. Or the
Yes,
food.
the yes, the hurry up and wait crap is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Um, gosh, I don't.
There's a lot of things.
I know, like, shower
Shower
shoes is
shoes,
definitely one.
that's it's disgusting. I just when you look
It
back, I'm like,
is.
ugh.
And
Yeah.
honestly, like, being a chick in 120-degree weather using the porta potty, it's that's horrible. Like, you dudes have it easier, like, just going to the quick bathroom, whereas girls are, like, peeling all of it off of you, and it's ridiculous. They should really, like, make a
See,
outfit
I
that
imagine the female showers to be not as bad as the male showers.
mhm.
But I mean,
I
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I
Oh,
don't know.
that's another thing. I'll tell you what is so gross, so gross. It was nice to have shower trailers, like, that was like a luxury to get those, but, like, when people would open the door and it would send a gush of wind in and the shower curtain would
Oh,
touch
touch
me,
you. Oh.
oh my gosh, and I was like,
Oh.
I'd just be all up against like, "Ew, ew, ew, that's so
The
gross."
I have the most disgusting shower. So like I don't need to like explicitly say like what happens in a guy's shower, especially like when you're stuck on the ship or whatever.
Right?
But every single day we have a messing and birthing inspection by the executive officer on the ship. So he goes in the heads, he checks the heads, he checks our birthing area where we sleep, and they're checking for cleanliness and stuff. We had one executive officer who, when he checked the showers, he would take his fingernail and scrape the bottom of the shower in the deck drains in the showers.
Yuck,
Is the fucking most disgusting
yuck.
thing. And we just had somebody, like, I know this is kind of gross, but somebody in the back, she's like,
Oh
does
my
he know
god.
does he know how many children he has under his fingernails right now?
Oh my gosh, that is
So
he
yeah, that's
is
pretty gross. So yeah, that's
yeah,
that's a
he's
bad thing.
nasty to do
Yeah,
that.
he's
That is
nasty.
so gross.
And yeah, that's probably a good point to end the podcast on. So thank you, Jennifer, for coming on the
Thanks for
show. It
having me
it
on
was it
here.
was a fun talk, and I hope you have like a ton of success with the book. I'll check it out when it comes out, and then yeah, just feel free to
Yeah,
reach out to the show in the future if you ever need anything.
for sure, and I'll keep listening to your podcast. Good job. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
it was fun. It was fun. So we'll talk to you guys next time.